First off, I'd like to say, it's just been a great start to the off season. Love to see the buy-in from all the guys and getting most of the team here. And, it's just been so much fun and grateful every single day to step out there and be a part of this team. Open it up to questions.
How does it feel to just be back out there? I'm sure you've thought of this moment for quite a while.
It feels amazing. When you get it taken away from you, you take, every chance you get to be back out here and really appreciate it, really take the most out of it. And, it's just nothing better than being out here with the boys playing some ball. So having a great time.
Like you haven't missed a step since the surgery, or since before the surgery.
Yes, sir. I believe, there's a lot of things here and there that we got to always continue to improve on. And, I was just very happy with the way I prepared and, went about that, recovery process above the neck and being able to stay in the playbook and, really just feel, all the ins and outs of this offense. And, it's been a lot of fun.
You can't tell any difference since 2 years ago when you first came out here?
I honestly feel
physically
bigger, faster, stronger, to be honest with you. Yes, sir.
JJ, what's it like striking a balance between being eager and patient with the process?
That's a great question. I would say, everyone wants to be perfect, especially at the quarterback position. But, the more you try to be perfect, it's going to kill you more than your imperfections will. And I feel like, just being able to accept, in these learning and teaching phases that it's okay to fail and try things and go out there and, take risks. And, I feel like you just, have to take it day by day, step by step. And, as long as you do that, whatever's down the road is going to come when it comes. But at least you took advantage of all the time in between.
If you think back to OTA from last year, OTA this year, just what's the biggest difference obviously?
I would say the familiarity within the offense, just being able to, regurgitate play calls and, understand where guys are at, where they're supposed to be if they're not there. And, the familiarity in the offense for sure is the biggest, change.
How often does something that you maybe absorbed by being around the group last year coming into play already during the off-season program?
Little things here and there, just like if, KO sometimes will have, the play call thing go out and just being able to go back into the archives of what you learned over this, past off season and, throughout the days this season, this off season. It's just been, a lot of opportunities where, the growth is, evident and applicable. And, KO just does a tremendous job of putting us in those situations and, we take full advantage of it.
Last year, how much, if any, did you throw at Justin?
Last year, I don't know the specific amount of reps, but I would say, it's probably not as much as it is now. And, it's every receiver that I'm with, it's that timing, those reps, all of that has to, be built up over time. So, the more reps, the better. And, I just feel like, we're not where we want to be, but we're going to be there when we need to.
He has not always been at these things for his schedule and all that. I just wonder how big it is that you've had Justin here. It sounds like he's been here for most of the time.
Yeah, it's been extremely huge. He's a tremendous talent, tremendous leader, but his leadership really shows up when he's here. And, just being able to get, that chemistry building on and off the field has been invaluable.
So you guys together at the Wolves game, how much time do you guys spend together?
We spent a good amount of time. The Wolves game was interesting, being mic'd up and all that. But, we spent a good amount of time together.
JJ was talking about sometimes you surprise him that you remember something that he said to you maybe a year or so, and then you put it on the field. And he goes, sometimes he assumes that you know something and that maybe you haven't gotten there yet. How do you do that balance with him?
The balance comes with every day. It's just, how many situations can he put me in where, I'm able to almost be on my own a little bit, and then we come back together and we regroup and we talk through it. And that's why this learning and teaching phase is so huge, because there's so many opportunities to do that, in a controlled setting where we can be uncomfortable and there's no consequences and all that. So, but he just is a tremendous teacher. A lot of those things stick with just the way he approaches, teaching the offense and his schemes and all that. But yeah, it's just the more opportunities, the merrier, for sure.
Yeah. How much time are you spending with Ryan Kelly and kind of where your chemistry now with him?
a good amount of time with Ryan Kelly. We met a couple times with Coach Coop and just went over just little things about the offense, base stuff, and just be on the same page with that. And, it's a continued process. That relationship is going to grow throughout the remainder of this offseason and the entire season. So, yeah, I'm very excited. He's an absolute stud. Can't wait to get Will out here, and Justin's been fantastic. Great additions to the room. Donnie got some time today, so it's been really awesome having those guys.
You mentioned taking risk in this phase. What does that look like? Is that maybe trying to make a throw into a tight spot that you wouldn't otherwise think you could do, or what does that look like?
For sure, I'd say most of the risk is just anticipatory throws. Trying to fit it in a tight spot, and trying little things with my footwork and my eyes and little things like that. But yeah, it's just not being afraid to fail out here. Go out there and try new things, and afterwards chalk it up and go from there.
JJ, it looks like there's a lot of progression, or it's you're just like going through progressions and using your vision. What are you focusing on in those types of instances?
I would say just the timing of everything and making sure that, in these 7-on-7 periods, like you can't, hold on to the ball too long, and just being able to time up things in the rhythm of the scheme and the progression, and ultimately find completions. That's the name of the game. So.
We talk about not being afraid to fail out here. How long has it taken for your career to get to a point where you can make a mistake and see effectively kind of?
It's probably, I would say, up until my junior year of college. Greg Harden, God rest his soul, he passed away, and he did a big, just job of making sure that, if you don't believe in yourself, who's going to believe in you? And that comes with believing in every single throw, every single decision you make, and always not letting that carry over into the next play. You learn from it, you emotionally detach from that outcome, and you just keep moving. But it's, yeah, I'd sum up to that for sure.
Have you become comfortable with being uncomfortable in this phase? He said that's what he likes to throw at you guys.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, there was a lot of, above the neck capacity today that we were just stressing, and it was just so much fun out there to be able to hit some of those play calls and hit the reads and get the criterias down. And then there's some where you miss a certain part of the cadence, but at the end of the day, it's all learning. Every experience is a great experience to learn, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun in the meantime.
Just throwing the football. How far have you come accuracy-wise, and what's the key to increasing that accuracy as you go along?
Just reps with the receivers, finding that timing with all these guys and being able to, just keep stacking day after day, and, not trying to put it on them, but really trust them in and out of the cut and put the ball to the spot where it needs to be. And, it's just all about feel and just getting those reps. So that's where the accuracy will come.
Mentioned to that point, throwing the football. Do you ever measure how far you can throw it in the air?
I don't believe I have recently.
In college or
in high school I did, yeah.
How far you go?
It was a windy day, I will say that, but it was like, I want to say 78 or 80, but it was a windy day, yeah.
Too humble.
Yeah, a little bit.
Whose brainchild was it to beat Mike up at that most games?
Say that one more time.
Whose idea was it being Mike at the most games?
I don't know whose idea it was. We have the same marketing agency, so I believe it was theirs. I didn't know until the day of, so yeah. Yeah. I would say just naturally age, being able to be here the entire off season, work out 5 days a week, and just, consistently stack those days, because over time it's going to, show up to how I feel right now. But we still got a lot more to go with that, and, I'm excited to continue that process.
All the things you're talking about, where does this defense kind of fall into the challenges that you face? Because I don't know if in every NFL OTA there's a cornerback blitz coming on the first
Yeah.
play of 7-on-7s or whatever. But I'm just curious, what impact that has on the overall challenge or the type of defense that these guys play.
It's a tremendous blessing, just being able to go against that scheme, go against those players. The way Harrison Smith plays, you can't get that anywhere else. And just being able to, see that every single day, it's extremely invaluable, because, it's a copycat league. I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of that from opponents this year. But, it's just fantastic to be able to, go against Flo and those guys every single day.
What's something you've seen
Couple more for JJ.
What's something you've seen Harrison do that you weren't necessarily had seen before?
He just does a tremendous job of, I don't want to rant him out too much, but a simple thing, he just, uses his eyes and his body position because he kind of he's been playing the game for 14 years at this level, so he feels different concepts and he's familiar with those, and he tries to bait us into things with his, head and eyes this way, but his body's really going towards the field, so little things like that.
JJ, when you see some of these things in practice, what's your process like coming out of here to go back through, whether it's looks you haven't seen before or just things that you kind of can review? What's your process of digesting what you did on the field and learning from it there?
During treatment, I'll watch the film once and just kind of quick buzz through it. Just really eye candy stuff. How did it look, just from a base perspective, and then I dive into it deeper that night and just go over each play and really all the intricacies of what I saw, what I didn't see, and why that was the case. And then that next day we're in here dissecting it with these great coaches, Coach McCown, Jordan Traylor, and Coach O'Connell, and that's a good process that's worked for me so far, but it's obviously a living, breathing thing. So
How much are you going to defensive coaches to kind of pick their brain or defensive players about here's what I was trying to do to you there?
A little bit here and there. I'd like to do more of that, especially like meeting time and stuff like that. But it's just little questions in the locker room, little questions on the field. But yeah, anything I could get from them, the better.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. Great seeing you guys.